I want to look at one of the lingering issues that I have with Nintendo 64 consoles, and that is the gigantic power brick on the back. This is the... what is this called? AC power supply. I call it the power pack or the power brick. I tend to hate these things. They're seemingly inefficient. They're huge. And I've already modded my Super Nintendo to run an alternative power through a USB-C. So I want to supplement this thing with something that's way simpler and more readily available. At least in my opinion, it is. Tons of things that I own run on USB-C, namely my phones. Well, anyway, I really just don't like this setup. This thing is, like I said, pretty inefficient. Even when this the system is just plugged in and not on, this generates heat. So I'm gonna take this apart because I need one of the components out of this, which is this interface here, or output plug, I guess. I just mainly need that, and I know it's on. How is this stuck on there? This thing is huge. It's just stuck on there on its own isolated board on a ribbon, so it's pretty easy to desolder this and use it for my setup, because I'd still like to use this plug for my design. But look at all this. Okay, I've got us focused in now just on the power supply from the Nintendo 64. Going to just heat up these pins here from the ribbon just to remove this section here. Should be pretty easy. Just like that. Just gonna touched up. Gotta check these points to figure out which one's 3, which one's ground, which one's 12. I'll put a diagram up in the video to show what is what. That way it's easier to know what pins are going where and where you need to connect up your 3 volt and 12 volt. Okay, got the plug out. I bought this again because it is a pretty cool thing that worked for my Super Nintendo. A 5 volt USB to 12 volt DC barrel plug, but I just need the board out of here. I don't need the barrel plug. I just need something to take 5 volt and step it up to 12. There we go. That's all we need, just this internal board. I'm gonna desolder it. So let's get these leads taken off. Won't need those. Okay. Five volt to 12 volt, 5 volt to 3 volt, and this has a amp max of I think 2 amps. I'm hoping this will work, even though on the schematic for the battery pack I just went over, it looks like the 3 volt rail wants 2.7 amps. That's kind of a lot. That's quite a bit, actually. I'm hoping this, which has a max of 2 amps, I think, will be enough. So this is just going to be the base components. Let me grab my USB-C. Alright, now this is going to be the base components. A tiny USB-C breakout, which has the voltage, data lines, and ground. Just simplified so it's easier using these for charge ports and stuff like that, not high-speed data transfer. Nintendo 64 output pin thing. 5 volt to 3 volt converter board, a buck converter. 5 volt to 12 volt converter. Okay, and I did go into CAD to design up just a very small container to hold all this. I don't know if it's coming through on camera as well because it's extremely bright red. So I designed it to sit right in here. Some excess PCB here that doesn't need to be. Trim that off so it's flush. There we go. Output thing goes there. USB-C. Ooh, I should have put that in first, but it's going to sit in there roughly like that. And like so. It's going to be a little more organized, of course, but this is just the rough idea. And a topper. Keep that nice and organized. Well, of course that's going to have to be hot glued in or something. So this just slots in the back of the Nintendo 64 here. I made a little cleft. Let me just take this out because it's going to fall out anyway until I get it situated. It takes up significantly less. I don't know if I could show it on the stove camera. It takes up significantly less space, and I just have this lip here to pull the thing out. And it's just held in with pressure. There's drafts on the molding here, which means there's like slight angles. And that creates enough pressure to hold everything in, along with the plug itself. So the next thing we need to do, I guess, is rough test it. So I know 12 volts here, get the 12 volt board. 3 volt is here. So I'll connect those up, connect it to the USB-C, and then dry fit it. And then if everything checks out, move it into the actual housing so that I can put it into the Nintendo 64, and then we should be good. everything's soldered up, so let's take some time to go over what we just did. Output module or output port from the Nintendo 64. We have our 12 volt line, ground, and red, which will be 3 volt in. 3 volt connects to the buck converter, which takes 5 volts from USB power and knocks that down to 3.3 volts for the Nintendo 64, which it needs. The other end, we have our 12 volt line, yellow, coming from our boost converter, which takes 5 volt from the USB-C and amplifies it up or steps it up to 12 volts. And then internally, the Nintendo 64 will take 12 volts and knock that down to 5 volts. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about putting it in here just yet. I want to take a USB-C plug this in. I want to check the voltages to make sure that everything is going well. And then we can try and plug this into my Nintendo 64 and then see how it goes. The USB-C mod is worked, so that feels pretty good. I'm going to turn this off, get everything taken apart and disassembled so I can get this mangled board setup into the tiny little housing that I designed and get it plugged in, and then it should be proper. Good. Back on the workbench and away from the kitchen, the rough setup has worked, and what I need to do is now get it inserted into a proper case so it doesn't look, well, janky. This should be fairly simple. I did organize this in a way that everything should fit nice and tidy-like in here, with the aid of hot glue, of course, to make sure everything is seated properly and not going to jiggle around and ruin connections. Oh no, my 12 volt line popped off. That sucks. All right, let me repair this real quick and then we'll get back. And of course, before you test anything like this by plugging it into the wall, it's always a good idea, obviously, to use your multimeter to make sure that the connections are secure. I do this every time I solder something, just to make sure that it's making a good connection and to make sure things aren't shorted together. Like, for instance, the 12 volt line and the ground, they're pretty close together. Same with the ground and the 3 volt. I check everything to make sure. You don't want to be sitting there burning out your board, wondering why nothing's going on or not working correctly. So it's always a good idea to have your multimeter out. Be familiar with how to use your multimeter. It's not difficult. It's pretty straightforward. Just get comfortable with it, I guess, is all I'm saying. Okay, I have everything squeezed into this box, although I'd like to get that wire just out of the way just a little bit more. Just kind of tucked out of the way. Okay. Probably kind of hard to see. 12 volt board is off to the side down there. USB-C is in situ, same with the 3 volt board, which is tucked into a little pocket. And this has rails for the output board to sit on. I need to introduce hot glue, especially to this USB-C. I think I'm just going to lift this out temporarily, just to give me a little more space to work with. I just need to make sure that the port has a little bit of a holding force. Now that I'm thinking of it, I might Captain tape the bottom of this output board, just so this doesn't make connection with anything else. I always get worried about that. It's always better to play it a little too safe than a little too stupid. Excess off right there. Okay, that should help prevent shorts, covering just those bottom connections there. Now I want to dab hot glue. Where is my pointer? I want to dab hot glue right down in here so that I can secure my USB-C port. So let's get some hot glue. I think it's about ready. See there, I'm just gonna shove this in, hold it in position a little bit. And hot glue does a lot of good sometimes, but I hate messing with it because of all the strands. While I'm at it, I'm just gonna coat the top a little bit so that 5-volt input is a little bit protected. Oh, these strands are so annoying. Okay, that should be good enough for that. And like I said, I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue onto here, just so that when this seats into the pocket back here, it's got a little bit of holding force. Okay, like I said, there's little rails in here. Might be kind of hard to see. This slots into, held in there with pressure. I'll use a little bit of hot glue, why not? I'll just use it around the lid here. Just on one side, I don't think it needs much more. It's going to be held into the system with a lot of pressure anyway. Okay. I have that readied. Let's get the Nintendo 64 and plug it in, and then I'll go and test it again just to be sure. But I think this is going to work, of course. Get this. Okay, here we are. The camera's a little close to it, but have our ports opening here. Have our power brick. Try and get that lined up. Oh yeah. Well, it sticks out a little bit, but it definitely doesn't stick out as much as the original one. And it takes up significantly less space. And like I said, it's got a little pull tab that makes it easier to eject it from your Nintendo 64. I think it would be cool just to give this another test, just to make sure that everything in here is good. I'm sure it is, so let's go over to the kitchen again and give it one more test. Alright, USB-C is connected to the back of the power block, and the TV is still connected, right? Also runs on USB-C, why not? Let's just see how it goes. Should be the same as before. Cartridge might be a little funky, but no, we got picture on the first try. Good deal. Let's see, Nintendo 64, back. Monopoly, ugh. Yeah, let's try Paper Mario. I'm assuming it's gonna work because, I mean, it got to the boot screen of the EverDrive, so I'm assuming it's all good. And it's running Paper Mario, so I'm guessing this is all good. Alright, I think I'm going to end it here. It seems to be working fine. Runs on USB-C. That's all I wanted. Good. Okay, bye.